right, well, hey, welcome to Terra Nova. How you guys doing? Men's retreat weekend, big weekend. We also have a group up at Orange County Rescue Missions Village of Hope serving meals tonight, so a lot going on tonight. And of course, you wonderful people are here, and some of you are watching online, and just want to welcome you as we are in part 2 of this series, Speak Life. Subtitle is The Right Words at the Right Time, which would be so awesome. Wouldn't you agree? Like, that would be just so great. And have you ever had that experience of thinking of the right thing to say when it was too late? Like, you think of it the next day, or you're driving home in the car and you're like, oh, that's totally what I should have said. Except that usually those are like these zingers that put people in their place. It's like those mic drop moments, like, that's what I should have told them. But what would it be like if we had the words at the right time that would like turn a situation around, turn a person around, that would like inspire and ennoble and heal it and make it better? Those kinds of words right at the right time. I think that would be an amazing superpower. That's what I think. In fact, there's a line from the Proverbs. There's a collection of wise sayings in the Hebrew scriptures that we call the book of Proverbs. And there's one of them that goes like this: like apples of gold in settings of silver. And it's like a work of art. It's like the craftsmanship of fine jewelry. Only this was written in a day and time when jewelry was made by hand, by people who were artists and craftsmen. And it's like somebody who just knows how to put together this beautiful piece of jewelry is the right word spoken at the right time. It's artistry. It's beautiful. And so we kicked off last week this series, really just saying, hey, words are powerful. Words are powerful. And we looked at another proverb that goes like this. This is a very famous one. The tongue, that is our mouths, our words, has the power of life and death. That the tongue has the power of life and death. The words that we're saying to others, or texting or tweeting or posting or commenting to others, the words they're saying to us, the words that we're saying to ourselves all the time, that those words have the power to build up or to tear down. Those words have the power to give life and energy and courage and hope and stamina and motivation. They have the ability to heal, or they have the ability to do just the opposite, to take life away, to leave people feeling defeated, deflated, shamed, to cause division and anger and tear things down. That the tongue, our words, and I think we would all agree, have this power to do a lot of good and a lot of harm. And then the proverb says, and those who love it, those who like appreciate it and cherish it for the beautiful thing that it can do, they will eat its fruit. In other words, they will actually benefit from that ability to speak life. It will feed and fuel them as well. And you and I have the opportunity every single day of every single week with every person we encounter. We have the opportunity to do that, to either hurt or help. And so we ended last week saying that I'm under the impression, I think, that we consistently underestimate the negative potential of our words, that we underestimate the downside of this great power that we walk around with all the time. And the downside is huge. It's scary. This thing here, my mouth, my words, can be so destructive, can do so much damage. But at the same time, and here's how we ended last week, the upside, I think, is even greater. Think about it. It's amazing. You walk around every single day with the power to speak life to people. And I think we, as much as we might underestimate the negative potential of our words, I think we underestimate the positive potential even more, especially our own personal potential. Our own potential to speak life and to bring encouragement and healing and hope to folks. And I think we tend to sell ourselves short and say, well, they won't care, and my words don't carry that much weight, and it won't really matter. But we underestimate this incredible power we have. And so we ended last week with that very cleverly named exercise, the Life-Giving Words Challenge. And I hope if you were here last week, you did that, like you took that to heart, and you thought of some people you needed to say some life-giving things to, and you did that. But one of the challenges I think that we have when it comes to speaking life-giving words that really give life to the other person, one of the challenges we face is that we're all just so incredibly different. We're different. And that means that the words that speak life to me aren't necessarily the words that really speak life to you. In fact, coaches have long understood this, right? That one athlete might respond to that in your face, just challenging, highly critical, daring kind of words. They might respond to that really positively, like doubling down, and they're going to prove you're wrong. And another athlete might be just completely defeated by that and give up. And that second athlete might respond better to words of like empathy and compliments and such. And the first athlete, you lead with that, and they might not feel like you even care about winning. Like, what are you doing right now? Because we're just all so different. We're all so different, and that means the words that I need to hear most are not necessarily the words you need to hear most, or the words that you would ever be inclined to say to me. And that brings us to where we're going today. And we're going to look at something I think is just so powerful that was written by a man named Paul, or the Apostle Paul, St. Paul. You've probably heard of him before, in a letter that he wrote to the very pro-Roman city of Ephesus, which was the capital of the Roman province called Asia in modern Western Turkey. Ephesus was a very important city. Paul had spent a lot of time there, some difficult years there, and he writes this letter a few years later, and in the middle of this letter, he says this. He says, "So I tell you this and urge you in the Lord," it's strong language, "that you must no longer live as the nations do." That is, like everybody else does. You don't live like everybody else, like going with the flow and absorbing the way of life and the way of thinking and the values and the approach to life and relationships that everybody else has around you. Because, he says, and then he adds this line and he develops this idea a bit, and this is really powerful. Here's why. As the nations do, in the futility of their thinking. Futility means like the emptiness or the worthlessness of their thinking, of their minds. And this is just so genius because hundreds and hundreds of years before modern psychology, Paul is constantly bringing our dysfunctions of behavior and relating back to our thinking. He's always doing this, that it all starts in our minds with the way we think. And in this context, he's specifically talking about cultural aspects of the way thinking works its way into whole systems, so that people and culture start thinking wrongly together. And then he develops that idea a little further, and he says that is the nations, like this culture you live in, they are darkened in their minds. There's that word again. There's something that keeps them from seeing and understanding. There's some darkness, and as a result, this is powerful, they are separated from the life of God. In other words, there is a way, he's telling them, there's a way your society thinks about things that just seems normal. That's the way everybody kind of goes about it. There are cultural norms, and that was true in their society. It's true in our society as well, that actually keep people from experiencing the life that God has for them. And it's not just that they don't want to, it's that they can't because the way they think is incompatible with the life that God actually has for them. They're darkened in their minds. They're separated from this life of God that God wants you to have because of ignorance that is in them due to the hardening of their hearts. And here's something we can all relate to, because there are things that we don't know, like a lot of things, right? There are a lot of things I don't know. That's called ignorance. And then there are things that we don't know because we don't want to know. And that's called willful ignorance. There are things that we are pretending not to know because they're inconvenient, because knowing them and acknowledging them and kind of leaning into that and learning that better would kind of confront some things that we like about the way we live. And there's ignorance, and then there's willful ignorance, and most of us have both. But then he says, and this is where it gets really beautiful, then he says, listen, that's them, that's the nations, but that is not you. That is not you, he says. That is not the way that you learned Christ. That's not the way of Christ you learned, or the way you learned Christ when you heard about him and were taught in the truth that's in Jesus. Like, that's not you, and that's not what you heard. Then he says, here's what you heard. You were taught to put off the former way of life, the old self. Just like discard it, put it off, which is being corrupted or destroyed by its, I love this phrase, deceitful desires. Did you know that your desires have the ability to deceive you? You probably figured that out, right? Your desires have the ability to lie to you. It's true. And you start wanting something that you know you should not have, cannot afford, would not like, this is not going to be good for me, but you start wanting it, and you are your best, most irresistible salesman. You are the best salesman in the world at selling you something you should not have. And you can't, you will deceive yourself, right? Because you want it. Our society's like, that's not you. Man, you put that off, that whole way of deceiving yourself with that is the old self, that old you with its old, deceitful, dysfunctional wants. I mean, you've discarded that, he goes. You've discarded that. That's not you. You were taught to put that off and then, check this out, to be made new in the attitude or literally the spirit of your minds. Because your mind has a certain spirit to it or a certain attitude, a certain character to it. We unpacked this a lot in a series we did this past spring called Winning the War in Your Mind. And we talked about how it's not just your individual thoughts, but there's a way of thinking that I have that becomes characteristic of me. There are patterns of thoughts. There is a spirit of my mind. And he says, you were taught, when you follow Christ, there is a transformation that takes place where the dysfunctional old self is discarded and there's a renewing of your mind and the way your mind thinks. And he says, and you were taught to put on the new self. And the new you, he says, and he says this in a number of his letters, that's the real you. The new you is the real you, the you that you were created to be, get this, like God. I mean, that is heavy, right? Like you were created to be the very image, the very likeness of God himself in true righteousness and holiness. Now, to me, that little section right there is so dense, it's so packed. To me, it's one of the most powerful descriptions of the counter-cultural transformation of the life of someone who says, I follow Jesus. But then, as he gives us kind of these big ideas, he starts to get really specific and practical with it, giving us examples of exactly what that looks like, of putting off the old and putting on the new. And he talks about lying and stealing and anger and rage and idolatry. It's like all of the anti-God, anti-human, anti-community behaviors and ways of thinking and wanting. You just discard that and you put on the opposite. You put off falsehood and lying and you put on truth and honesty and just being real. And you put off anger and rage and you put on compassion and understanding and peacemaking. And then right in the middle of all this, he talks about our words, that our transformation as followers of Jesus from our false self, who we once were, to becoming who we truly are, must include our words, our conversations. And so here's what he says. He says, do not, talking about putting off something, putting on something, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. Now that term unwholesome, the word he uses in the Greek language means like bad or rotten or decayed. It's words that speak death. It was an adjective in their language that could be used to refer to spoiled meats, rotten fruit, even stones or bricks in a wall or a building that were beginning to crumble. You don't let any unwholesome, any bad or rotten or decaying or death-giving words come out of your mouth, he says, but only what is helpful for getting your point across so that you can feel right and understood. No, wait, that's a typo. No, here's what he actually said. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building yourself up according to your needs at the moment so that you can feel really good about you. That's not what he said either. But that's normal, isn't it? That's normal. That's culturally normal. That's the way the nations do it. That's the way our nation does it. That's the way our people do it. You speak your truth. You stand up for yourself. And hey, if it lands badly on the other person, that's their problem. That's not your problem. You need to get your point across and say what's on your mind. And we hear that all day long, every day. And what he says instead is so radical. I don't know if it had actually ever been said or even thought before he writes these words. And it is certainly not culturally normal. Not then and definitely not now. This is not the way the nations do it. He says, you don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only. How incredibly exclusive is this? But only. The filter on my mouth doesn't allow anything else past it, but only what is helpful for building others up. Now that word he uses, it's a metaphor in his language. It's a metaphor in our language. It's this idea of building or construction or like brick upon brick. And in their language, just as in English, for example, our word for edify or edification is related to our word for edifice. Like this whole idea of building or constructing or building, bringing something up. And he's using a similar kind of thing in his language. He's like, only use stuff that's gonna be constructive and it's gonna help and it's gonna build up. In other words, don't let a single word, this is incredibly exclusive. Don't let a single word cross my lips or my fingertips that destroys or tears down or breaks down or brings death or decay to somebody else, but only words that are helpful for building others up, get this, according to their needs. The need, the requirement in the moment, the right word at the right time, that it may benefit or literally give grace. In fact, some of you might have translations that use the phrase give grace right there, that it would just give grace. It would give grace to everybody who hears it. In other words, here's what he's saying. Rather than starting with the question, what do I need you to hear? What do I need you to hear? Which is quite honestly where we almost always begin, right? I mean, that's where I begin, whether it's parenting or work relationships or friendships or dating relationships or marriage or family, whatever it is you're working through. Here's where we normally begin. What do I need you to hear? And then this idea from Paul, it actually like flips the script on that and instead starts with, what do you need you to hear? What do you need you to hear? What is your need in this moment? What would help you? What would benefit you to hear? What would give grace to you right now? What would inflate you, build you up, strengthen you, speak life to you? And I just got to be honest, that is not where I start. It really isn't. That isn't where I usually start. In fact, it's not even where I want to start. Anybody like me, you ever have conversations in your head with people that you, like something happened and you go into a whole conversation with them? Maybe you have them out loud. I usually don't have them out loud with them ever. Like it just stayed in there, but I had it. I mean, I had the whole thing like 2, 3, 4, 5 times. You ever have a conversation about what you want to tell them and how you want to set them straight and how they got it wrong and what they need to hear? See, that's where I start. That's where I start in my mind. And Paul says, John, that is so old you, bro. That is so the old you. The new you, which is, by the way, the real you. In the image of God, the real you, the new you speaks life. It gives grace. It builds others up according to their needs. So John, take off that old ratty self with all of its rotten, decaying words. You just discard that old self and you put on the new real you, because the real you speaks life. Now, I think that's a really cool idea. I really think that's a cool thing to think, that the real me is this life-speaking, grace-giving, grace-speaking person, and to the extent that I'm not that, I'm not actually being myself. I'm not being my real self. That's kind of a cool idea. But the challenge, at least one of them, maybe one of many challenges, is this. Wanting to speak helpful words instead of hurtful words isn't always enough. It really isn't. Just wanting to speak helpful words instead of hurtful words isn't always enough, because the source or the cause of my unhelpful words might not actually be my intentions, but my ignorance. The source or the cause of my unhelpful words might not be my intentions, so wanting to do better might not actually help all that much. Words that are helpful to my needs might not actually be beneficial or grace-giving to my wife, or my workmate, or my roommate, or my kid, or my friend group. And here's something we all know. Every single one of us knows that there are times that even when we're trying to help, we can naturally choose words that are not very helpful. Ever happened to you? You wanted to help and you kind of burned the barn down while you were doing it. And that's why I think sometimes we're just baffled and confused and we feel defeated thinking, well, I didn't mean it the way they took it. No. I wasn't trying to hurt their feelings. They totally misunderstood me. That may be what they heard, but that is not what I said. I said this, you heard that. Wanting to speak helpful words instead of hurtful words isn't always enough. We need a way of understanding what would be helpful to them because we're different. We're all so different. And what's helpful for me isn't necessarily what's helpful to you and vice versa. Now, people have been talking about this, like differences in personality and temperament for many centuries. The first I know of was the Greek guy, father of medicine. He's known as Hippocrates, famous for the Hippocratic Oath, right? Circa 400 BC. And Hippocrates talked about the four humors, the four bodily fluids, if you will: sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic. And he tied that into how the body works and such. And though his theories about how the humors relate to medicine and how the body functions have been pretty much discarded, as it relates to personality and temperament and differences, basic differences between ideas, his ideas actually formed the backdrop to many of the popular tests that a lot of us have done. Carl Jung picked up on his ideas, developed it further, and it's this idea that we're all different, but we're different in some really similar ways. And now there are dozens of these tests. I'll just throw a few of them up there. I wonder if you've actually ever taken any of these, and there's like easily a dozen more than this: DISC, Myers-Briggs, Caliper, Keirsey Temperament Sorter, True Colors, Working Genesis, Enneagram, Strengths Finder. Anybody ever, you look up there, anybody ever take a test like that, one of those or another one? Like a lot of people, some of us have probably taken 2, 3, 4, 10, like taking a lot of them. And so tonight I want to share a very simple grid. It's a very old grid that I think is helpful. And then I'm going to give you some resources where you can take it further if you're interested. But I was recently re-exposed to this through a new resource by a writer, Kathleen Edelman, and a study called I Said This, You Heard That. You might recognize that as the title of this talk tonight. You can find out more on this website, iSaidYouHeard.study. And she describes this in terms of 4 different colors. Now, quick disclaimer. I feel like I need to do this. I am naturally skeptical and cynical. I see the holes in all kinds of things. So to be clear, I do not think there are 4 types of people. I think there are 8 billion types of people. Just to be clear, like there's not just 4, and how all of these various components we're going to talk about briefly come together and then just get filtered through our past and our story and our gifts, our interests and so forth. It all comes out a little bit different. But oversimplifying, which is what this does, can actually be really helpful when building an understanding of ourselves and others and our communication like we're talking about tonight and how incredibly different we are. And it does turn out that though we are all very different, we are different in some very similar ways. And so we're going to start out with 2 axes, if you will, 2 continuums or scales that form 4 quadrants. You're going to track with me, I know. And the first scale is extroversion versus introversion. This is just one of the really basic ways that we're all a little bit different from each other. Extroverts tend to be more expressive. Introverts tend to be a little less expressive. Extroverts are what are known as editors of the ear. They talk while they're thinking, and sometimes they talk in order to find out what they're thinking. It's true. They say things they don't agree with and edit it out later. Whereas introverts are way more, they're called editors of the mind. They're way more likely to want to process something before they start talking about it. I have people on my staff that say things like, hey, can you tell us what the conversation is going to be a few days earlier so I can be ready to have it? Which would never occur to me, but it does occur to people who are wired a little bit more this way. Extroverts are typically more public with like everything. Their stuff, their space, their home, their thoughts, their feelings. They're just more public, whereas introverts tend to be a little more private and value their privacy more than extroverts. Extroverts tend to be a little more adventurous in the sense of jump in and try. Hey, something's new. Hey, yeah, let's just jump in. Let's try that. An introvert is going to be probably a little more cautious. I want to wait and see. I watch, and then I'll decide if I want to do it. And in general, extroverts are just more obvious. They're just more obvious. They're more out there. And introverts are a little more subtle. with everything, including their humor. Even their humor is often a little more subtle. And so just this basic continuum, okay, of how people are different, extroversion versus introversion. And again, it's a continuum, it's not either or. And then the horizontal axis, if you will, the other scale is people-oriented versus task-oriented. And people-oriented, they value things like harmony, and like, how is everybody doing? Hey, before we do anything, before we jump in, how's everybody doing? How's everybody feeling? Whereas task-oriented people lean more quickly into accomplishment, and they're a little more interested in what's everybody doing? Like, did you get it done? Are you working on that? What's everybody doing? What's everybody up to? What's everybody working on? People-oriented people lean into fostering relationships. Task-oriented people lean into getting things done. In fact, I just almost wrote getting things done as the counter to everything. Like, this is like getting things done, and then getting things done, and then getting things done. People-oriented people have a very strong play ethic. It's like play before you work, or even better, play as you work. Whereas task-oriented people have a very strong work ethic. You work before you play, work now, play later. And here's one of the most interesting ones. People-oriented people are just generally more positive. They just have a tendency to see what's right, and task-oriented people tend to be more critical and more quickly see what's wrong. So two scales, right? Two axes that create four quadrants, four basic temperament types. I'm going to introduce them to you right now. There's the sunshine yellow, who are extroverted and people-oriented, right? And then there's the bold red, who are extroverted but task-oriented. Both are extroverted, but yellows are more people-oriented, reds are more task-oriented. And then we've got our deep blue melancholies, who are task-oriented as well, but they're more introverted with it. And then we've got our chill green phlegmatics, who are also interested, but they're people-oriented like the sanguines, not task-oriented like the deep blues. Okay, so four quadrants. Now watch this video and see if you recognize yourself or some other people that you know. Check it out. All right, so did you think you know? Like, did you see yourself? You might have seen somebody you know as well. Let's talk about it for a second. First, we got these bright sunshine yellows, sometimes called sanguines, and they are sociable and talkative and expressive, enthusiastic. They are positive. They tend to be quite optimistic, very spontaneous in the moment, quick to say yes. Hey, you wanna? Sure. There's going to be some people there. It's going to be fun. Absolutely. Let's do it. Creative, affectionate. They're often the huggers, the touchers. Inclusive. These folks are the cheerleaders of groups, the people who are quick to celebrate others and celebrate wins. They're storytellers. Oh, I've got a story for that. Oh, wait till you hear it. These sunshine yellows are these expressive, people-loving, extroverted folks. But here's one of the things we're going to find out. As with all of the strengths, there is a flip side to them all. And what we often don't recognize is that our weaknesses are actually flip sides to the strengths. We want people to get rid of all of their weaknesses and keep their strengths. And that can be a real challenge, okay? So you put the word T-O-O, in front of that list, and you've got some people who, let's flip to weaknesses, are impulsive, Loud, not necessarily, measuring the volume of the room all the time, interrupting, talking over people, talking too much, exaggerating. They start telling their stories. You're not matching their enthusiasm. They just start taking the details and making them bigger. Unfocused, forgetful, forgetting names, forgetting details, naive, don't really listen that well, scatterbrained. There are some potential weaknesses that come with all of these beautiful strengths. But the yellows have a superpower. They have a superpower, and each one does, that is so unique to them. It's like, well, other people can do that, but this personality does this like no one else does. And the superpower is seeing the best in people and circumstances. They are positive and optimistic, almost to the point of really annoying some of the other personalities, but they're just positive and they're optimistic, and that is a beautiful gift. Now, real quick, anybody think they might have some yellows in their life? Anybody? Like, really, only a couple, three of you, a few of you? Okay, think you might be one. Anybody want to own that? Let's talk about the reds real quick. Reds, these bold reds are extroverted just like the yellows, but instead of being people-oriented, they're extroverted, but they're more task-oriented, which means they're action-oriented, they're bold, energetic, very decisive, very self-driven, self-motivated. You don't have to tell them what to do. Tend to be bold. They'll let you know what they think if you ask, and sometimes if you don't. Energetic. Very practical. Ends justify the means. Well, that's not what the rules say. I don't really care what the rules say. It works. We're going to get it done. Let's do that. Ends justify the means. They are very committed and loyal. Oh my goodness, to a fault, articulate. They're comfortable with power and influence. They enjoy being responsible for things, and they don't mind being in control. And in fact, if nobody else is in control, or the people who are in control aren't stepping up, the person in the room most likely to go, let's just do it. All right, let's go. Is the red personality. However, that in itself leads to some weaknesses, right? Because they can be aggressive, impatient, very impatient, quick to just get frustrated, very driving, like let's go, let's do it now. Not very complimentary because they tend not to be super positive in terms of seeing everything that went right. They can lose people in the task, just trying to get it done. They can come off as know-it-all, can do it better. Never mind, I'll just do it myself. If you've ever heard somebody say that, they might have been a red. Like, never mind, I'll just do it myself. Dislikes tears and emotion. They can be harsh and critical and so forth. And so there's some weaknesses that come with those strengths, but they too have a superpower. And their superpower is seeing and achieving goals like none of the other personalities can. All of them can, but they do it. I mean, that's their superpower. Now, anybody think they might have some reds in their life? Those impatient, but really, bold doers. Yeah, got some reds in your life. Might actually be one. If you know me, you have a red in your life. Okay. Then we've got our deep blues, our deep blue melancholies. They're introverted, they're task-oriented like the reds, but they're more introverted with it. And the deep blues, man, they are empathetic. They are conscientious. Oh my goodness, thoughtful, orderly, cautious. They are scheduled, planned, and punctual. And they have deep friendships, a few friendships, but they value quality over quantity. They are calm under pressure. They do things the right way. And they are often the deep thinkers. They will process something for a while before they're ready to talk about that. But then you can imagine you put TOO in front of a number of these and you got some weaknesses. They can be overly analytical. They can suffer from analysis paralysis. Like they've thought through it so many times and the pros and cons, but what if, that they're not getting off go, right? They can be moody, critical. They can have standards that are way too high for other people and for themselves. This personality, more than any other, leans maybe towards perfectionism. They can come off as cold and reserved and distant and be hard to get to know. And they, more than any of the other personalities, might have more fear of failure, like because they're always, they know all of the things that could go wrong. They've got all the what ifs, right? But they too have a superpower, and their superpower is anticipating obstacles and planning on a way to solve them, because they're just thinking it through. And they see down the road and they see what can go wrong, and they're already thinking about what they'll do before they get there. And that is a beautiful superpower. Anybody think they might have some blues in their life? The thoughtful planners. Thoughtful planners, yeah, you got some blues in your life. And then the last one, these folks are really awesome. They're the chill greens. The chill greens, sometimes called phlegmatic, they're introverted like the blues, but they're way more people-oriented with it. And so they end up being really agreeable, easy going, easy to get along with. They're tolerant, man, they're steady, reliable, content, low maintenance. They avoid conflict and drama like the plague. They tend to be super sensitive. They're kind and considerate and reflective. They're patient and flexible. I mean, it sounds almost like the perfect human, right? But then you've got some weaknesses that go with that, right? They can come off as unenthusiastic, unmotivated, even lazy, indifferent, like I don't care, whatever, starts to sound like I just don't care. I don't care about anything. I'm apathetic. They can be very procrastinating. They can become too compromising. Their desire to be agreeable, like, hey, it's okay, like whatever everybody else wants, can start to become too compromising, like I'm losing my voice and myself. Hesitant, cautious, timid, and boy, the greens can be stubborn, resisting change, especially when they're constantly feeling pressured, and especially by those reds. And they're like, they dig their heels in, unlike any other personality. But they too have a superpower, and their superpower is staying calm and kind in the midst of chaos, and any red would love to have that superpower, but they just don't have it. So anybody think you might have some greens in your life? Those steady, peaceful, calm greens? Yeah, absolutely. Now, real quick, before we go on, we've actually made arrangements with the publisher of this study and this test to offer you the test free of charge. And if you're taking notes on the white sheet of paper, there's a QR code there. Scan that with your camera on your phone. Not right now. Like, it's going to take you 20 minutes. So do it when you get home. Scan that. You have to use your own email address. One email address per test is the way it works. There's also a button if you're taking notes on the app. There's a button you can click and take the test there. We would love to have you take it. And by the way, once you take it, if you want to go deeper with this, buy the book that I mentioned. I own it. I have really gotten a lot out of it. It's really helped me through some things. And we're going to be kicking out some resources for like parents, parenting your children who are of different colors than you, and so forth this week. So there's a lot to go in this. But all of this, here's the deal. All of that's really interesting. And we could go in a lot of different directions with applying it. But the point tonight is this. These personalities can really miss each other. They can really, really miss each other. A guy was telling me, a husband, and it turns out, as I'm hearing him talk, he is totally yellow. Like, he is full on bright yellow, extroverted, people-oriented. And he was told by his wife, who it turns out is very blue. And by the way, the diagonals are sometimes where the greatest amount of conflict happens, who is very blue. What she wanted for her birthday was for him to clean up the stacks. And by that, what she meant is in the bedroom, if you looked at her side of the room, it was neat and orderly, and there were just a few things, and they were all in place. And then you look everywhere else in the room, and there's stacks. There's stacks of books, there's stacks of clothes and t-shirts. And she goes, what do you want for your birthday, babe? I want you to clean up your stacks. He heard party. That's what he heard. Like, who doesn't want to party? They were new in their marriage. It was just a few years in. And like, nobody wants somebody to clean up the bedroom for their birthday. That's ridiculous. That's not a gift, a party. Like, everybody wants that. And we're going to invite all your friends. And we're just going to, he's not telling her this. He's going to surprise her, which is even worse for a blue. He's going to surprise her. And so he plans the whole party, and we're going to celebrate you, babe. And it's going to be awesome. He's got the music. He's got great food. He puts it all together. It's a lot of work. And as a result, guess what he does not get around to? The stacks. So the night of the party happens, and after it's all over, he's buzzing, because yellows after a party are just like, they just got charged up. It's like drinking shots of caffeine. Like, it's like, and so he comes up to the bedroom, and he's like, that was awesome. Wasn't that great, babe? And she looks around and says, so I'm still surrounded by all your stacks. See, he heard party. She really meant, this would be what I would want for my birthday. Another guy was telling me about his bold red, very red wife, and their total chill green young boy. And like many greens, he's slow to get up in the morning. Any greens in the room, you're like, yeah, I like to lay in bed. I like to chill for a while. I'm just going to chill in. He's slow to get up in the morning. He's slow to get moving. And she comes in every morning just very red. Just like there's urgency, red speak with urgency, like, hey, you need to get up now, and we got stuff to go, and we got food ready, we got breakfast downstairs, and she's barking orders just with all of this urgency, to which this green temperament child just like digs in his heels and pulls becomes even slower to move, more procrastinating, because that's how a green will often react to that kind of pressure, to which, how do you think she responded to that? louder and more urgent, because that's what a red would do, right? And so then this guy and his wife went through this book that I just referenced, and they realized what they were and like some of those weaknesses and what their sensitive, wonderful, chill son was. And so she started coming into his room, sitting on his bed, rubbing his back and speaking to him softly. Good morning. Good morning. I love you. Hey, breakfast is ready downstairs whenever you're ready. Now, just as a side note, if somebody were to come into my bedroom and do that, first of all, I'd be like, why are you in my bedroom? That's what I'd be thinking. But if even my wife was, I would be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you rubbing my back and speaking softly to me right now? But that is exactly what their chill green son needed. And guess what he did? Got up and came downstairs and ate breakfast, and that just became their new rhythm. Instead of all of that bright red urgency and barking, it just became this chill green morning experience for him. See, the words we use and the words that we respond to and the words that we kind of need are shaped and colored by our temperaments, if you will. Now, 3 real quick points with this before we wrap up. Number 1, your temperament determines the words that you speak or are most inclined to speak. What you say, how you say it, what it means to you when you say it. And so, for example, yellows speak the language of people, fun, and positivity. People, fun, and positivity, celebration, excitement, inclusivity. They say things like, well, that sounds fun. Who's coming over? I've got a great story about that. I would love to help. People, fun, positively, celebration, inclusivity. Reds, on the other hand, speak the language of action, urgency, and brevity. Much more to the point. Hurry up. Let's go. What are we doing? Are we going to do it or not? Do it this way. You did it the wrong way. Do it this way. The plan was they speak with urgency, action, brevity, and then the chill greens, well, they speak with chill and harmony and peace. They say things like, hey, no big deal. I'm good with whatever. Hey, what everybody else wants to do, that's totally fine. Hey, I'm just going to chill a bit, okay? I'm just going to sit and relax for a little while. They speak the language of chill, harmony, and peace, and they speak it softer than the reds do. And then the blues speak the language of perfection, order, safety, precision. They say things like, I've been giving it some thought, and the schedule says it's time to, are you sure that's safe? Are you sure you can trust them? I'm going to need to think about that for a while. Now, we could go on and on, but the idea is these are really core to who you are. These are core to your very temperament, determining the words that you tend to speak or the words you tend to lead with, and the words you think other people will find helpful because they're the words that you would find helpful, right? Your temperament determines the words you speak, but your temperament also determines the words that you hear, including the way you hear the words that are being spoken and the words that you need to hear, the words that you would find helpful and the words that they need to hear or would find helpful. So reds might respond positively to a challenge that would just crush the heart of a green. And starting talking about everything being fun and new and people, you got the rapt attention of all the yellows and you've completely lost the blues, right? Because that language falls on them in a different way. Yellows, for example, here's what they need. They need approval, inclusion, attention, and affection. That means approval, liked for who they are without needing to change, because everybody's always telling yellows they need to dial it down and be different than they are, right? Inclusion, they want to be invited and included. Attention, meaning you're actually listening to their story, looking in their eyeballs, and trying best you can to match their energy and enthusiasm for the story they're telling. Affection, being noticed and acknowledged by the people who are close to them. Reds need loyalty, meaning people have my back. I can count on people. A sense of control, which Kathleen Edelman defines as this: everything's going to plan and everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's that sense of control. Like, hey, it's all under control. Things are under control because things are going according to plan and everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're all pulling their weight. Respect, meaning I'm respected for who I am and what I bring, recognition, recognized and appreciated for all the energy I put in this or how hard I worked for that. Reds need that. Greens need harmony, huge for greens. Everybody's getting along and everything's running smoothly. Feeling of worth, people value and celebrate me for my talents and my traits and like who I am. Lack of stress, big for greens, meaning I'm not engaged in conflict and I don't feel pressured by anybody to do stuff right now. And finally, I struggled with this word. I called it invitation, and here's what that means. They're being invited into it. Like my opinions and my views and even my involvement are wanted and valued and requested, not demanded. And that's especially important for greens because they are the least likely of all the personalities to volunteer their views and opinions, but they have them and they want people to ask them what they are. And then there are the blues, and they need safety, sensitivity, support, space, and silence, meaning they need to be able to trust, emotional safety, and sometimes for some blues, just physical, environmental safety, trust their surroundings and relationships, sensitivity, you understand them, you're being sensitive, and support, you're offering to help. You're offering to help, you're providing help. Hey, you got a lot going on, let me take some of that. And finally, maybe very importantly, space and silence, having time and privacy to decompress and process and think. And those are each personality. And the point is this, we often speak the words that are natural to us, but not especially helpful to them. We say the words that are natural to us, but not always helpful to the other person, and then we're baffled and confused by why they landed so wrongly. And so, in order to truly only speak what is helpful for building the other person up according to their needs, that it may benefit and give grace to them, I kind of need to become a student of them. I kind of need to think about this a bit more. The better I understand the words that you need to hear, the better I understand not only the words you need to hear, but the way you need to hear them, the tone and the brevity maybe, or the volume that I need to match for you, the way you would best hear them. The better I understand that, the better I can speak life to you. Because, and we'll end with this point, every word you use is a word you choose. Every word I use is a word I choose. And when Paul says, don't let any, but only, he's implying we're making choices. We're making choices every single time. In every interaction, in every moment, I'm making choices even when I'm not aware of them, even when the words are spilling thoughtlessly and freely from my lips. And in every conversation, I'm making a long series of choices. So I need to initiate a pause, take a breath, think about the other person, their differences and uniqueness, extend grace and understanding to them instead of judging them for that, and shape my words and my tone to their needs. And this, Paul says, this is actually part of our transformation. As followers of Jesus, from the false self we once were to our new self, who we truly are, part of that transformation is our words and how we use them, our conversations. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who hear. And speaking of hearing, that's actually one of the places we need a lot of help, because as we said last week, it's not just that we don't know what to say or how to say it, we don't know what to hear or how to hear it. And that is really a problem. And so we will pick it up right there next week. Let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for the grace that you extend to us. As we talk about and try to wrap our head around what it means to give that to others, where it really begins is what you've given already at us, that you speak the words to us that we need to hear. You speak words of life. You declare us to be free and forgiven, no longer slaves, children of God. You speak life-giving words over us, and we want to thank you for that. And then we want to return the favor, and we want to take all of that and just learn how to extend it to others. As we cast off our old self, through the renewing of our mind, put on the real us, the us that you created us to be. And so I just want to pray that over myself, my conversations this week, but also over everyone listening and watching, but everyone here as well, that we would be people who don't let unwholesome words come out of our mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. And I pray that in Jesus' name, amen. Well, hey, real quick before you take off or before you sign off, Scott and Angela on the video there told us about our Connect cards. We would love to get those from you before you sign off. Drop those in the baskets. But also, as promised, I wanted to give an update on our Be Rich campaign. So a few weeks ago, we did a whole series based on doing more and giving more and set some goals for some things that we wanted to do in the world around us that were pretty great. And so the financial part of that was a goal of $60,000 given over the next 3 months. And people have been making commitments, and many of you have been making commitments. And that was going to go to ship a container of wheelchairs to Egypt and to fund 50,000 meals for orphanages in Zambia. We're going to do this thing for the local teachers at Olivewood Elementary. And then the issues with Haiti and Afghanistan had come up. And so we've had a lot of things that are going on. And I told you we'd give you a few weeks, and then I would let you know how it landed. You guys interested? You want to know? All right, so here we go. So committed so far, let me get a drum roll. Can you guys give me a drum roll? Committed so far, wait for it, is $73,820 so far. But wait, it gets better. Already given so far, $89,965. Which, by the way, if you made a commitment and you haven't given it yet, that's not your exit off the bus. Whoo! Almost had to give there. No, that was between you and God, and it was not about the goal. And here's the deal. So here's what this means. So we already have more than we were. So check on the shipping container, wheelchairs to Egypt, done. Yes. We've already given about $30,000 to some programs related to Haiti and Afghanistan, helping people get out, helping refugees near the border who are getting out, and finally, an organization who's actually working with people who are still in Afghanistan. And so we will continue to fund those, and we've got this Kids Feeding Kids thing coming up, and we've been doing a number of these Love Your Neighbor projects. You guys have been filling out those flyers, and we've done thousands of dollars worth of those kinds of things, just blessing your neighbors and friends and family as well. And we'll continue to do so. Here's our pledge. Every single penny that comes in, no matter how far we together exceed that goal, is going to go to these causes. Not a penny will be used here. So don't let this slow you down in giving. Let's do more and give more. Would you agree? I mean, there's just so much good that we can do. In fact, we've had 2 new options come up just this week, and we're like, we can do that. We can actually say yes to that without debating. So that's really cool. So by the way, if you're giving, you can use the envelope. You can mail that in, but you can also drop your envelope in the baskets on the way out with your Connect card. And if you're signing up for a life group, after you pick which group and put your info on there, you can just drop this whole brochure in the basket on your way out as well, and we'll get you linked in to a life group this fall. And while you're headed out, don't miss the Kids Feeding Kids table. A bunch of you are always signing up. You can serve on Friday night, the 1st, or you can serve on Saturday morning, the 2nd. You've got this card, and this card is for you to give to somebody else to invite them to do it with you. So head out there, sign up at the table, and we'll see you back next week for part 3 of our series, Speak Life, the right words at the right time. God bless you guys. Speak life this week, and we'll see you back next weekend.